One of my closest friends is someone that I've known since kindergarten. We grew up in the same small town together. We went to middle school together and high school together. He was at my house almost every single Friday night in high school because we had to be home because Shabbat was a requirement in my house, even though he was not Jewish. And for as long as I can remember, he knew every single one of the Shabbat evening blessings. And to this day, there is a non-Jew living in London who can recite the Friday night Kiddush at the drop of a hat. Now listen, because we had such an intimate relationship, he's always pushed me with questions throughout my life. Now just this last summer, Elise and I, we met up with him in Lisbon. And as we walked through the narrow streets, our conversations, they tilted toward what he had been listening to lately. And the topic, it wasn't new, but it struck me with a question that I couldn't shake. The topic that this Shabbat praying non-Jew is listening to the most is atheism. Now, if I didn't know better, I'd think he kind of sounds like a Jew. Now, you laugh, but it's true. The leading voices in the atheist movement, the founders of the contemporary atheist movement, they're mostly Jews. Sam Harris, the leading figure in the new atheist movement, was born to a Jewish mother. Christopher Hitchens, the author of God Is Not Great, that affirmed his position in the new atheist movement, was born to a Jewish mother. And from 2010 until 2018, the president of the American Atheists was David Silverman. Raised in a Reformed synagogue, he became a bar mitzvah, he went to Brandeis for college, and then he sent his one child to the I.L. Peretz Community Jewish School. Now, it's always struck me that so many of the leaders in the atheist movement are Jewish. And I don't think it's coincidence. I don't actually think they, the Jewish leaders of the atheist movements, have ever actually looked around the table of atheists, raised their hand and said, hey, don't you think it's a little bit odd that we all come from some Jewish background and we're all sitting here at the same table? My guess is that they believe that after thousands of years, they just happen to be the generation that finally knows the truth. And they're going to tweet it from the rooftops. There is no God, and that religion is only there to offer answers to what we don't know. And you know something? Maybe they're right. Maybe. But it's a little bit odd that they're all Jewish. Maybe it's not even coincidence. What if there was another option? What if, after thousands of years, this group of Jews don't actually understand where they came from? Denying the certainty of a knowable God and espousing that religion is not here for answers, it's not a new idea. Dare I say it, it's an old idea. It's a Jewish idea. It's so Jewish that table of atheists, it makes up a minyan. Because fundamentally, the question at that Jewish atheist table is the exact same question that should be at the center of our discussion in this room today. A question which needs to be at the very forefront of our minds. What is the point of religion? Now, this is a question that could not be more profound and more fundamental to the times that we're living in. Times where liberal democracy is under attack. Individual freedom and the rights of women are at risk. Our politics and our economics, they're deteriorating alongside truth and civil debate. And this is not to mention climate change, the crumbling of free speech at universities, a rise in loneliness, depression, and drug abuse. If there was ever a time in each of our individual and also our communal lives to examine the rationale of religion, it's right now. This question, it has never been so urgent, and your answer so vital to your and our future? What's the point of religion? Because if we don't know that, then we don't know why we're here on Kol Nidre. We're either wasting our time or equally bad. We're not going to use the next 25 hours for what it's meant for. If we can answer that fundamental question of what is the point of religion, then we begin to know how to respond to this moment that we're in. But let's begin by talking about what Judaism is not. Because there's a lot of things that people incorrectly think Judaism is, including my minion of atheists. Judaism is not about static tradition. Judaism is not about believing in God. Judaism is not about the answers. So why not? Let's begin. Tradition. Now, there are many Jews who do say, why do we go to synagogue? Why do you have to go to Sunday school? Because I did, and my parents did, and your grandparents did. It's tradition. But there's a problem. Judaism, it's not an unchanging relic, and you know this. Because what did we do in the temple 2,000 years ago? We sacrificed. Now, how many animals have we laid upon the fountain in the courtyard on this holiday so far? How many Jewish sacrifices have you ever seen? None. We used to do that, and when the temple was destroyed and our reality changed, we too realized that if we did not change with the times, we too would disappear. The only constant in Judaism is change. What is traditional in Judaism is change. The Ashkenazi Orthodox are new. They only began existing roughly 250 years ago with the emancipation in Europe, where there was a group of Jews that were worried about the rate of change, so they decided to dress and to act like it was the 18th century and stop time right there. That's why you'll see Orthodox women wearing wigs and the men wearing hats of fur, because that's how we dressed in the 18th century. But it's new. Moses, he didn't dress that way. The Jews in Babylon, they didn't dress that way. So no, Judaism, it's not about just holding on to what was. Otherwise, we would still be sacrificing. Now, the second thing that Judaism is not, it is not about believing in God. Judaism has never been about believing in God. You cannot believe in God in Judaism. Belief is stating that you know something to be true. Judaism has always made God and the idea of God intentionally out of our intellectual reach. God is unknowable. Now, this goes all the way back to the Torah when Moses is at the burning bush and asks God, what is he supposed to say when he gets to Egypt? Who is Moses supposed to say sends him? And it's right there at that exact moment. The only moment in the entire Torah, the only moment in all of Jewish tradition that God reveals God's name to Moses. And God says, Ehyeh Asher Ehyeh. I am going to be what I am going to be, which means nothing. It means nothing at all. And it's intentional. Even Moses, he's confused by this, and he chirps back, really? You want me to say that an unknown in the future tense sent me? You see, God has no external referent. There is nothing else that is like God. This means you just can't come along and say, oh, listen, I don't think God is like this or like that, therefore I don't believe in God. To say that you believe or know what the infinite is, it's chutzpahdik. Because we're not infinite. We're finite. All we can say is that there is far more that we do not know about the infinite than what we do know. It's equally chutzpahdik for those atheists to sit at a table and to say, I am certain that I know with my finite mind that there is nothing infinite beyond my comprehension. So to say that Judaism is here for us to believe in God is stepping completely out of the tradition that Moses laid the foundation for. Those Jewish atheists at that table, they come from a heritage of saying, I don't know. But they're in the present, living in a non-Jewish society where a known God is the dominant vernacular. Jewish atheists have lost the thread of the discussion from the last few thousand years. Now, the third thing that Judaism is not, and it never has been, is a way to provide answers to what we do not know. And I cannot count the number of times that I've had people say to me, I believe in science and not religion. The dichotomy is set up as an either-or. It's the view of religion as a mythology designed to answer our questions about the universe that we do not understand. When we did not have a theory of the Big Bang or the proof of the cosmic microwave background radiation to prove that there was such an event. We had a story that the world was spoken into being by God. Now, in this model, you choose either science or religion. But religion, it was never here to give you definitive answers. For if the 6 days of creation story in Genesis was meant to be taken as proof as to how the world came to be, clearly the author of the Torah would not have followed that first creation story with a conflicting second creation story in the exact next chapter of Adam and Eve, because that would be really confusing. And even then, if you push back and you say, look, it says it right there. It explains how the world was made. Look closer. No, it doesn't. Look at the Torah. God, not exactly a construction worker. All that it does say is that words are spoken and the world came into being. Days of the week, they do not exist unless we give them names and speak them into being. What we see in the Torah is a radical understanding that reality is made by us, by our words. There is no external referent that makes a Wednesday different from a Saturday, while a year has the referent of the sun compared to where we are in the universe. It's why sometimes it's hot in the summer and other times it is snowing in the winter. But a day of the week is determined and created by us. And once I have the realization that the world created in Genesis is a world of meaning, which can only be made through words, then suddenly Judaism can be built. And we start with the foundation of days of the week. And from there we move to relationships, which are built and destroyed with words. And from relationships we move to ethics and the commandments and building a society which does not actually exist unless we breathe it into being. Because when you realize this, you can build all of reality with our words. Because California, it doesn't actually exist. The United States doesn't exist. Money doesn't exist. Nothing really exists without words and people buying into this reality. The Constitution, it's just a bunch of words on a page. But if we all buy into those words as sacred, as if the U.S. Constitution is real, then suddenly the United States does exist. Judges and Supreme Court decisions matter because we have created a structure of existence with our language, just like Genesis chapter 1. Judaism is an endeavor to take that structure and then to build a palace in this world which reveals meaning in the divine within everyone and everything. So, if Judaism is not a static tradition, not a belief in God, not a source of definitive answers of how we got here, then what is the point of the Jewish religion? In fact, Judaism is about questions. the ultimate question. Why am I here? You see, tradition in Judaism is about constant change to respond to the moment that we are in. As times changed, so did our dress and our traditions. Even Rabbi Beth, who spoke about intermarriage on Rosh Hashanah, that sermon would have been unimaginable 100 years ago because Jews were considered a down marriage. Her sermon would have been irrelevant to early 20th century Jews. But as our status in the world changed, so did the perception of Jews, which in turn led to intermarriage. And as our society has changed, so too has Judaism and the rabbis within it. In Judaism, tradition is not about how things have always been done, but rather tradition is about reaching into the ikar, reaching into the essence of the ancient Jewish tradition that was gifted to us by our ancestors. A gift that we're meant to embrace, we're meant to squeeze, we're meant to push against until it breathes life into this moment, into this generation. Traditional Judaism is founded in a constant state of change. That is what Fiddler on the Roof was always about. It was not about a story of a small little village called Anatevka that is stagnant, but it's about a village that is in a constant state of change. It's about a village that the Jews have to leave in exile for the new world. That is tradition in Judaism. Secondly, while the Jewish concept of God does not allow for belief in God, it's founded on faith in the infinite, in the unknowable. Faith is very different from belief. The 19th century American philosopher William James states, "Faith is not a claim that a thing is certain. Faith is the force that enables us to act with certainty that something is possible." When I married Elisa, I was not certain that it would work, but I had faith that it could. I had faith that if we played well, we communicated often, we stayed on the mission that we collaboratively defined, if we used our disagreements and our fights to grow, that if we did all of that, I had a faith that it could work out, that it was possible, that our marriage could work. Albert Einstein was a deeply religious Jew. He wrote, "The most beautiful experience we can have is the mysterious. A knowledge of something we cannot penetrate, which only in their most primitive forms are accessible to our minds. In this sense, I am a deeply religious man." Judaism is not here to explain how the world works. Rather, Judaism is here to ask a very different question than how. It's a question which does not ask you if you believe in the infinite because you're finite. It's not a question if you're doing exactly what your ancestors did because the world is changing, and therefore so should we. In order to respond to the most pressing issues each individual and each generation is confronted with. None of these are the primary reason for Judaism, or even for us being here tonight. When we ask, what is the point of religion? It's to answer what Rabbi Abraham Joshua Heschel called the ultimate question. Why are you here? That's what we're doing sitting in this room. That's what we're supposed to be doing during these next 25 hours. We're supposed to be scraping the depths of our souls and asking that ultimate question. And if we don't answer it, we're just wasting our time here. We shouldn't be here. We should just skip Yom Kippur this year. This work is the most important work you will do with your entire life. Period, full stop. Because if you don't know your why, then you're just reacting to the world randomly. In these 25 hours, we pull back from the world. We don't bathe, we don't eat. We just deeply, deeply meditate on if we're lucky enough to get another year alive. What are we going to do with it? Will those small daily actions that we carry out, will they answer our why? And given the moment of time that we're living through, it has never been more important to know our why. We come from a tradition that is based on changing with the times to address the moments that we're in. That is Jewish tradition. Judaism is not asking you to keep doing what you've always done, because that would be crazy. It's imploring you to react and to change to the moment that you're in. If the rabbis had refused to turn Judaism completely on its head and said, listen, we've always done sacrifices in the temple. We're just going to wait for the third temple to get built. Then we're going to get back to the way we do things. If they did that, none of us would be sitting here tonight. They changed and they adapted to respond to their times. The challenges that we are confronted with are huge. And what an awesome time to be alive. What an awesome time to be a Jew. What an awesome time to be part of something way older than any of us individually, part of something which will live beyond any of our imaginations. If we are traditional enough to change and to listen to what the point of religion is. We come from a tradition that describes God as something which is yet to be. It's the future tense. It's the infinite. It has infinite possibilities. The climate, it might be changing, but the future will be what we make the future to be. With the rise in loneliness and depression, Genesis, it's screaming at us that reality is yet to be created and spoken into being. If you are angered by our democracy being at risk, remember how powerful we are. We can speak the future into being. The world is created and it's also destroyed by our words. So, what are you doing with your life? With your relationships? With your work? With your personal, spiritual, inner life? Because Judaism, it's here to ask you a question. It's a question that each generation that has come before us has asked. Generations that were confronted with challenges sometimes bigger than anything we're seeing today, and sometimes smaller. And at each of those moments, the Jews that were religious, and I mean really religious, the one who knew in their kishkis that to be a Jew meant to embrace change and to grapple with the ultimate question of why are we here? And if they truly answer that question with every fiber of their being, they could, maybe, possibly, change the trajectory of the world like no one had ever seen before that point. And their world and our world would never be the same. The point of religion is for you to answer why. Why are you here? This world needs you. This moment needs you. Your descendants, which we're going to only know you and us as ancestors, they need you. They need you now more than ever. And we were born with a gift that we bring to this world. And at the end of these 25 hours, as that sun, as it dips into the Pacific, we should be launching into this new year with an energy and an enthusiasm worthy of the magnitude of this moment. Because if you can answer that ancient question, you can change the world in ways that will have effects that none of us in this room can even imagine. The question we must sit with is, if you're given another day, maybe even another year, what will you do to take this canvas, which we call life, and to build a masterpiece?